Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. After the massive strategic restructure at the end of 2015, AMD formed Radeon Technologies Group, which was led by Raja Koduri. RX 480 was their first product, introducing big changes such as shifting of the manufacturing from TSMC over to global foundries and for the first time being built on the 40nm FinFET process. This time, with no enthusiast tier of card in sight, AMD was clearly targeting the price to performance sweet spot. Let's take a quick look at the specs. The RX 480 released in June 2016 and was priced at just $199 USD for the 4GB model. The 8GB version was $229 USD. Powering this Polaris GPU is the 4th generation GCN architecture made on a 40nm process. When compared to its predecessors, RX 480 comes with 20% less shader units and just 32 ROPs, which is precisely half the amount of what the 290 and 390X had. RX 480 was available with either 4 or 8GB of GDDR5 memory that was clocked at 2000 MHz using a 256-bit memory bus. Card was operating 150W TDP, but most day one reviewers found it pulls slightly more and even exceeds 6-pins power connector spec. The card we are looking at today is PowerColor's Radeon RX 480. I purchased this boxed example last year for £95 or about $115. However, the going rate for a good second-hand unit at the time of recording is around £75 or $90 USD. Up close, Radeon follows the typical red and black theme. Those triple 80mm fans come with mute fan technology, which essentially keeps them at 0 RPM for when the GPU sits at idle or is under 60C. Also included is a nice metal backplate which helps prevent PCB from bending. PowerColor used a 8-pin power connector and card offers an array of outputs, including 3 DisplayPorts version 1.4a, a HDMI 2.0b and a single DVI. Radeon is held by just 6 screws and comes apart really easily. Upon first look, thermal paste was not dried up and it seems as if this card was not used by a crypto miner, very clean on the inside. The blower style reference model of the RX 480 had some trouble keeping temps in check and often throttled the GPU clocks, but I doubt we are going to see this card overheating. Radeon's cooler is using 4 copper heat pipes, yet it feels very light in hands, tipping the scale at just under 500 grams. Finally, let's apply and spread fresh MX4 and jump to benchmarks next. Time to see the RX 480 in action, starting with 3D Mark's time spy. And with 4500 points, well, it's falling behind its predecessor, the 390X, and sits nearly at the bottom of my graph. Looking at the GTX 1060, yes, it's faster, but only by around 3%, and let's not forget it was about 30% more expensive. That's better, innit? To absolutely no one's surprise, we see similar results in Firestrike Extreme. The RX 480 is behind 1060 and 390X by a very small margin. Heaven Benchmark finally puts the RX 480 ahead of its last year's predecessor. Yay! On the other hand, the GTX 1060 took off and is now leading by 24%. Next, let's put AMD's claims to test and see how power efficient the RX 480 really is. Well, what do you know? With 128 watts on average under load, it's roughly about the same as Nvidia's Maxwell architecture and twice as efficient as the 390X, which is great to see. However, it's not even close to Pascal's GTX 1060. At $229 USD, RX 480 came in at a very attractive price point, so when MSRP is considered, it delivered. With 8.5 points per every dollar from its asking price, 480 offered great value for money, leaving all the gen cards in dust. Last and probably the most important factor to consider is current pricing of this GPU. The average asking price for a 8GB model seems to be around £75 or about $90 USD. This makes the 480 somewhat attractive for those on a low budget. I don't know about you guys, but with all of the synthetic benchmarks over, I'm pleased with the results. Let's pick up some games next. Still hot off the press, let's look at the Starfield first. Any attempts to test in New Atlantis resulted in a crash within a couple of seconds, so instead I've landed on this frozen planet called Procyon 3. To give RX 480 fighting chance, I'm using the absolute minimum there is. Render scale at 50% with FSR2 upscaling. I won't lie, running Starfield at these settings, you'd be hard pressed into believing this game released in 2023, and even though Bethesda calls for an RX 5700 or 1070 Ti as a minimum, it's not particularly well optimized at the moment. Anyways, RX 480 managed 33 FPS on average with 1% lows at 27. Game received another small patch a few days ago, and I hope that the performance continues to improve. New DLC for Cyberpunk just dropped. Are you guys picking up Phantom Liberty? Game also received a massive 2.0 update which introduced a bunch of new features and some changes to core game mechanics. I've not had a chance to play around much, being busy with Starfield of course, but the game seemed to look better and there's also new engine sounds. I've decided to test both pre and post update performance with my usual run from the outskirts of Night City, heading towards Lizzie's bar, and found out that the results are nearly identical or within a margin of error. As always, I'm using medium preset and FSR on quality. RX 480 managed 52 FPS on average with 1% low sitting at 42. Compared to other recently tested GPUs, 480 was on par with 390X and marginally faster than GTX 1060. Jumping back to 2018's FarCry 5 instantly reminded me of how annoying this game can be at times. Screw the capture party mechanics. Despite this, RX 480 had no trouble running this title with Ultra preset and ISO 70 FPS on average with 1% lows at 56. This time, the GTX 1060 led the way and was faster by 13%. Forza Horizon 5 next. Using a high preset, RX 480 managed a respectable result of 78 FPS on average and 1% lows at 65. I haven't tested many cards with this game yet, so the only comparison I have is against the 5600 XT, which was faster by 60%. Let's switch up gears a little and jump to Halo Infinite next. Despite relatively modest hardware requirements, the PC version does put quite a strain on your GPU. When using medium preset, RX 480 pushed 60 FPS on average with solid 1% lows at 45.
Look, a rabbit.
I must admit, it has been a while since the last time I've tested Metro game. Kinda reminds me of the good old times when I was testing AMD's 5, 6 and 7000 series of GPUs. Anyways, RX 480 had no trouble even with the high preset, delivering 67 FPS on average with 1% lows at 55. Last game tested today was Outer Worlds. Playing it after completing Starfield. Well, let's just say it didn't feel as good as before. Still, it definitely runs much better, and with very high preset, ISO 70 FPS on average and 1% lows were at 56. Time to wrap up. The way this GPU was structured is not that different from GCN 1.2 found in the R9 200 series, yet AMD promised great performance with RX 480, and honestly speaking, I think they delivered. Remember, when the R9 390X launched 12 months prior, it was nearly twice as expensive at $429 USD and consumed nearly twice as much power. Ignoring the negligible drop in performance, RX 480 is superior in my eyes. Cheaper, more efficient, and as fast as the last flagship. Hell yeah! Sadly, lots of RX 480s ended up in the hands of the crypto miners, which then pushed prices even above MSRP, again spoiling it for the average gamer. So, what's my final verdict of the RX 480? Should you even consider buying one in 2023? Well, it depends. This GPU packs enough punch even for some newer games, and the 8GB of VRAM is still acceptable. For the average asking price of around £75 or 90 USD, it's not the worst card to buy, but with the second-hand market oversaturated with cheap ex-mining RX 580s, it's a tough one. Spending a little more can get you RX 5600, which is matching RX 480 for price to performance, offers better power efficiency and still a driver support from AMD. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts about the RX 480. Have you ever owned one? Thank you for your continued support, and I hope to see you all in the next one.